Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm ready to do my full review on this sucker. This is the Emerson CQC7, which was loaned to me by my buddy John from BGM Knives. I will link to John below, both his YouTube channel, which he posts on every now and then, some cool videos of him in the shop, but also to his Instagram and his site and all that good stuff. John is a really cool dude and makes fantastic knives. In fact, my hiking pack is sitting next to me, so quick cameo of my personal BGM knife. This is my BGM pike, and I love the pike. If you don't believe me, watch my review on this one. That was early in the channel, actually. That was about the time I started the channel is when I got the pike, and still lives on my day pack. Carry it and use it all the time. So John sent me this to check out just because he's a cool dude. He asked if I had reviewed one before, and I said no, and so he sent it. And that is pretty cool of him. I've owned one true Emerson. I went through this in my first impressions, but I had an Emerson A100. It was an older model. It was one that I got secondhand and had probably been through a few hands before mine, and was just kind of a stiff action, and I didn't love it. I loved the idea of that knife for quite a while. I really like the design of the A100, nice simple lines and neutral grip, a lot of things that I like, but I just, in application, didn't love that knife. And so ended up just kind of flipping it pretty quickly. But this is a knife that's interesting because I've had the ProTech version of this knife. ProTech makes a CQC7A. It's an automatic version of the knife with ProTech aluminum scales, 154 cm blade, and there's no wave on it because it's a push button auto. But this is the proper Emerson. This one happens to be wearing this kind of tan or coyote G10. I kind of dig the color personally. I don't mind it one bit, especially with the black hardware. I think it looks pretty good. I'm sure it's a bit of a polarizing color, so some of you may also like it. Others may think it would look much better in the typical Emerson black, but I dig it. It's got the typical Emerson, pardon me, typical Emerson clip. And this one is a V-ground, but with a chisel edge blade. So you'll see, and I talked about this in my first impressions. I'll be talking a little bit more about it as we go along here. But we have an edge bevel on this side, no edge bevel over here. This one is 154 cm blade steel, as are pretty much all Emersons from what I gather. And yeah, full steel liners. Actually, I guess they could be titanium liners. I didn't look that up. I'm fairly certain they're steel liners, but maybe I'm crazy. Maybe they're using titanium liners at Emerson. I am not sure off the top of my head. I probably should have looked up more of the technical specs of this knife, but if you know me and you watch many of my videos, you'll know I'm not a huge techs and specs guy. That's not a real thing. Tech and specs guys. Technical specs guy, I don't know. I don't really care that much. When I'm researching a knife that I want to buy, I really care about the specs, blade length and weight, and all of that stuff matters to me when I'm looking into a knife. But once I have it, couldn't care less, because it's just about how I relate to the knife physically and tangibly here. So I'm not positive what the liners are made of. On top of that, I don't like this knife. I've tried to like it. And so I haven't. Usually, when I have a knife that I'm preparing to review, it's fairly easy for me to carry it and use it a good amount leading up to the review, because I get excited about having a new knife in my pocket that I'm trying to feel out. And this knife is not a pain to carry. It's not a real bother in the pocket or anything like that, but I have been getting a lot of very exciting things lately that I have been preparing to review as well. And I also just I don't know, this knife doesn't click for me like a lot of knives do. So I found each time that I put this in the pocket, it was because I was putting it in the pocket to get ready to review it, because I don't like reviewing things that I haven't experienced enough to feel like I'm speaking about them from a place of confidence. I've used this knife less and carried it less than most knives that I review, even though it's been in my possession a little bit longer. And really, it's taken me a while to get to it, because I keep finding excuses to not put it in pocket for a day because I don't really like carrying it. There are some things about this knife that are good, and it's not that I hate the knife. I don't think it's a bad knife, but it's just very much not a me knife. So I'm going to kind of go through how I got there and work backwards a little bit. But let's start with the ergos. So this one in hand for me is okay. There's no real like glaring hot spots. There's nothing that's hurting my hand to hold on to, but nothing about it is really comfortable either. It's a very kind of boxy feeling handle shape. It's just quite thick this way, and the edges of the G10 are chamfered enough, but they just feel kind of thick. And then this whole kind of back strap of the knife, I don't know if you want to call that, the spine of the handle, is kind of blocky, boxy, and then down here, it just, none of it is comfortable to me. None of it feels intuitive in hand for me. I don't know if Emerson designs this knife to be for operators wearing gloves, or if it's for people with bigger hands than I have. I wear medium-sized gloves, but I feel them out real nice. I don't know, it doesn't feel great in my hand. Again, not terrible, but on the lower end of acceptable for me in hand. I do like on knives that have the Emerson Wave, I find I enjoy having a thumb ramp, and so the Emerson Wave naturally creates a thumb ramp, and there's a little bit of jimping leading up to it, but it's non-aggressive jimping, and so it does feel like a nice place to put my thumb. This does feel like it pretty well lends itself to a saber grip. Hammer grip feels less comfortable to me than a saber grip, just the way my fingers land on here, but it's fine. And reverse grip is probably as good as saber grip. In fact, reverse grip might be the most comfortable grip, period, on the knife for me. Still, there are a lot of knives out there that I prefer in a reverse grip, but this knife is definitely tactically motivated, and so I feel like a reverse grip is a good thing to have on a tactical knife. So ergos are just like I said, kind of at the bottom end of acceptable for me. There's nothing about this knife ergonomically that I would really consider a big win. It's all just acceptable. Let's talk about carry. So the knife is not what I would consider lightweight. It's also not like a tank. It's not overly heavy. It doesn't feel preposterously overweight. I think it could probably benefit by having these liners skeletonized internally. That would definitely cut it down and make it feel less cumbersome in pocket. But maybe, I don't know, with this being a fighting knife, they wanted to have some weight to it. I don't know what advantage that would present over it shaving an ounce, but maybe. So the weight coupled with the pocket clip and its orientation just makes it okay in pocket. I don't particularly like having this much knife sticking out of my pocket usually. I prefer deep carry, but it's not like this carries bad. It's not like it's specifically uncomfortable in my pocket. The texture of the G10, and this I guess goes along with the ergos as well. I didn't even talk about the G10 texture, but it's a little on the rougher end of the spectrum, but it's not a real pocket shredder. It's not like Cold Steel AD15. I mean, it could definitely be way more harsh, and I've certainly had knives that have a more harsh texture, but it's not a light texture either. It's definitely grippy and gritty, and so the grittiness of it, the non-deep carriness of it, the weight of it, they all just make it like, meh. It just feels kind of like a boxy rectangle in pocket, and the thickness is probably the biggest thing that I notice when I have this knife in pocket. It just feels like for having these full liners, the G10 seems a little thick to me. I don't know. Just overall, the whole thing feels thicker than this knife profile, I guess, looks to me, and that I expect it to be before I pick it up. It just feels so boxy. So yeah, carry is like acceptable, but not great. let's talk about action. Probably my least favorite thing about the knife is the action. So we have two methods of deployment, really. We have the Emerson Wave, this being an Emerson. Seems fitting that it has it. So this is designed to catch on your pocket as you pull the knife out of your pocket. So as it comes out of the pocket, it catches on the corner and deploys it that way. That was the least graceful way to do that. But it catches on it as you pull it out, and then it's kind of like pulling out a fixed blade, because as you deploy it as you pull it from your pocket, it's automatically deploying with that motion, assuming you kind of pull in a backward motion, not just straight up. And so your knife is ready to go once it's pulled out of your pocket. The blade is deployed, it's locked into position. And I've always found that with wave opening knives, I don't have a big hurdle with them. I know some people can be kind of polarizing. Some people hate them. Some people swear it's the best and only way to deploy a knife, for all the knife fights that they get into. But for me, there's been periods in my life where I've carried waved knives exclusively for a long period of time, and then I get used to it and I like it because I'm used to it doing it every time. But with the frequency at which I rotate different knives into my pocket, I find these days, my lifestyle, I kind of err on the side of disliking it, because it's just a little weird when you're not used to it and you go to pull your primary out of your front right pocket and it deploys and you're kind of not expecting it to. So the wave is what it is. That's all I'm going to say about it. But I don't prefer this knife because it has the wave. I'd probably give a slight edge to it if it didn't. That being said, the action without the wave is bad. It's not good. It's just, what is that? Why won't it deploy all the way? I get it's on washers and it's like a tactical knife, but like I have a zero tolerance Emerson design knife. The 0620 is the ZT model, and I've reviewed that knife here and I've shown the scales I've put on it and all that. But that knife is also on washers. It's built by Zero Tolerance, but it also has a wave and a thumb disc. And that one, I can like middle finger flick the thumb disc and deploy it reliably, or thumb flick it and deploy it reliably. Here it just doesn't. For me to get this knife to deploy all the way, I have to give it wrist, like I'm in the 90s. I don't like that. I don't like it one bit. I should not, in my opinion, have to use wrist to deploy a well-built knife that's in this price range, especially. I don't know. I just feel like the detent and the washers should do the work for me. It shouldn't stop there every time. The amount of force I'm using with my thumb to get there is more than I would use on any thumb stud or disc knife that I own or have owned, and it's not even deploying all the way. So I don't like that I have to flick it out with my wrist. That's not a thing that I enjoy. I count that as a negative on any knife that I experienced in the year 2020. Tail end of it now, as I'm filming. Wrist flick is something that has become antiquated. I think that's safe to say. So the action is bad. It's just not good. This is not my knife, so I haven't like disassembled it and lubed it or anything like that. But the pivot certainly doesn't feel like it's overly tightened way out of spec or anything like that. This feels kind of consistent with like the A100 that I had. That's a big part of why I didn't like that knife, is the action felt like this. I should not be able to take a knife. So here's the detent. I'm past the detent. This is bad that I can hold it like this. I can shake it, and the handle, which is heavier than the blade, it like, I have to wrist that down toward the blade. The blade, forget it. It's not acceptable. It even like sounds a little gritty. I don't know. I don't like the action one bit. So the action is a fail. Carry is okay. Ergos are okay. Kind of low end of okay, if I'm being honest, on both of those okays. And then let's talk about cutting. So, still didn't even go quite all the way. Cutting performance on this knife, I would call okay. So, the idea of having a V-ground blade with a chisel edge is something that I like the idea of. I talked about that in my first impressions and even in my unboxing of this knife. the chisel ground edge, without beating a dead horse, gives you the advantage of being able to take all of your degrees per side and put them on one side, rather than having two edge bevels that match each other. So two 15-degree per side edge bevels would be 30 degrees inclusive. Having only one, even if you're at a 20-degree edge bevel, you're 20 degrees inclusive, because there's no number to add that to. So I like the idea of what that should do for your edge, but on here I didn't really find that it gave me any extra cutting performance noticeable compared to any of my knives, which are all ground with like V edges, if that's the proper term, and it probably isn't. But I didn't find that this was better to cut with, and something that I do genuinely find interesting about it is that on a knife that is designed to be right-handed, and I'm going to say that with confidence because there are no holes for a clip on the other side of the knife. This knife is designed to go in your front right pocket and be drawn with the Emerson wave to deploy it. So your right hand is where this knife is meant to be. I happen, oftentimes, when I'm doing cutting tasks, to pass a knife to my left hand. I even find when I'm cutting in the kitchen, like with kitchen knives, I almost always use my left hand. I'm left-handed for writing and for shooting. So because of that, I find that a lot of my really fine motor skill cutting tasks I pass to my left hand. But that being said, if I'm like processing cardboard and I'm slicing stuff, or if I'm outdoors, I'm chopping, that goes to my right hand because I play sports and throw balls and all that right-handed. I'm a weird mixed bag in that way. But what's really interesting here is on a right-handed knife, they've gone ahead and they've put the chisel edge on the side that would favor a left-handed user. And the best answer I've gotten for that is that Emerson maybe likes the way it looks on the show side. I don't know. I don't know what another answer for it could be. If you do, let me know in the comments. It'll be too late for it to make it in this video, but I'm curious as to what a possible advantage could be for that edge to be ground on the show side, thus putting the flat side in the spot that it makes less sense. I don't get that. So for cutting, since that's what we're talking about, cutting performance, it's okay. Even when it's in my right hand, I find that it cuts fine. It's still a V-ground blade. It's not a chisel ground blade, so it's not like I'm even noticing the orientation of the edge that much. It's pretty negligible. But I didn't find that this was like a super slicer or that I really loved cutting with it. It was good. It's right behind the edge, fairly thick, and it's kind of a thick blade stock with a relatively short grind, and so it just doesn't feel super slicey in general anyways. And I guess if this is designed to be a tactical kind of like combat knife, if you will, then who cares what side the edge is on? You're probably going to be doing more thrusting and slashing and stuff than like slicing cardboard with it. Maybe, if you're the person who is buying this knife to be used for what it's designed to be used for. So I can't really knock on it that hard as like an EDC knife, because it's not designed to be an ultimate EDC knife. And that's fair, but that's the way that I can judge it, because that's the way I use my knives. So take all of this with that in mind. And then on top of that, I will say that even though this is marketed as being a tactical knife, I've seen a lot of people make claims that they love this as an EDC knife for them personally. And their tastes and preferences have to be different from mine if they've come to that conclusion on this, because I just think it's a bad EDC knife. I can think of many other knives that I prefer to it. Every other knife that is currently in my collection, I think almost certainly, I can say with pretty sincere confidence, I think makes a better EDC knife than this. I just didn't like carrying it. I didn't really like using it. There was no sparkle for me with this knife, and the longer that I had it, the more times I realized, I gotta put that in pocket again and cut something with it, the less and less I wanted to each time. So this might sound really harsh. I don't really mean for it to, and I don't want to come down on all Emersons or on people who like Emerson knives. Ernest Emerson seems like a cool dude from the things I've seen of him, and he's also making knives here in the US. He's here in Southern California. There's a lot that's cool about Emerson to me. I'm just saying this knife for me really missed the mark. It was not something that I enjoyed or frankly even really liked. So I guess that's kind of gonna be it. Yeah, there you have it for this one. I want to thank John again for sending this to me. I apologize for kind of dumping on your knife a little bit, buddy, but I'm just trying to be transparent and honest here. And sincerely, I think it's worth reiterating. I try to, any time that I'm somewhat negative about a piece or overwhelmingly positive about a piece, reiterate that so much, almost all, of me reviewing knives invariably has to be about my preferences. There's some aspects of a knife review that are less subjective, but most of it is very subjective. And I want to be completely honest that especially the way I do this, like I said, not a big specs guy, not giving you weights and dimensions, that's all irrefutable if the information is correct, right? But the way that I do it, this kind of vlog style format, if this knife speaks to you, or any knife that I say I don't really like for me personally, if it's something that speaks to you, and you know a lot of the things that I said about it I don't like, don't take the time to argue with me about it, because I've already made up my mind here. I don't like this knife, but you are welcome to. And if you like it, buy it, enjoy it, tell people that you like it, that's fine. I'm not even, I have no energy to argue with anybody who does like this knife as to whether they're allowed to like it and I'm not. That's fine. We can have different opinions about knives. So I don't want to say that this knife is terrible for everybody because I don't like it. But I have no desire to own or carry or use this knife. And that's what it comes down to. So that's my way of reviewing knives. And I think that's just worth putting out there every now and then, especially when I'm a little bit harsh towards something. Also, one thing I keep feeling while I'm doing this, but neglecting to mention, holy lockstick, Batman. This is a lot of lockstick. And people say that about Emerson's. This one has it. I don't like lockstick. There's no blade play, so that's good. But the lock definitely sticks, and that's also a bad thing. So another thing on the list that I forgot to mention. Anyway, thank you guys for watching and hearing me out and checking this out. I am glad that I checked this knife out. I tend to be pretty choosy about loaners that I take because I don't like just reviewing knives because I can. I want to review the things that I'm curious about and want to check out and that I think that I'll like. And this is one that I was open to liking and just didn't, and that's fine. I'm glad to figure that out sometimes because it helps me to navigate better in the future. So thank you to John. Again, he will be linked down below. And for what it's worth, the knife that John made, I would say I would buy 50 of these before I would buy one of these. This BGM pike is one of my favorite fixed blades I have ever owned. I adore this knife. So if you haven't checked out John's work, I can't speak highly enough about it. Not only is his work fantastic, but he's also just a really great dude and a young maker with tons of talent. So keep an eye on him. He's somebody to watch. And I've said that before. I'll say it as many times as I can. He's somebody that people should be paying attention to. Anyway, there you have it. That's the CQC7 from Emerson, which was sent to me by John. And it was a long way to get there, but we're here. Thanks for watching, guys.